And that's what I had heard on mission, is that, yeah, they do want their stuff back, and they want their biologics back and their friends that are in prison back. Apparently, we've imprisoned some of them, because in the phone call that I overheard that I monitored, was that the NHI were going to come back about 50 years from the 1990s and demand that they had three things they said. They wanted their equipment back, they wanted the prisoners released, and then if those two conditions were met, then the emissaries could be exchanged. So the conversation then closed out on a note that I found horrifying, and that was the person on the distant end of the phone call stated, well, what happens if we don't return this stuff? And the other guy said, well, if we don't, you don't want to be those people. Those people are going to be put to death.
Welcome back. I'm here again with Jason Sands. Jason, welcome back.
Hello. Good to be back.
Okay, so I think in the last episode we talked a little bit about, or at least we were starting to talk about, where you first went to report your story and the existence of this particular program. And it sounds like you went through Congress and you circumvented AARO. Why didn't you go to AARO first?
At that point, I was only asked to come see Congress. What had happened was I'd received a phone call from some committee members in October of 2022, and they were the first ones to contact me and want me to come in and testify. So I did what they asked me to do. After I went and testified to them, January of 2023, those same committee members asked me to go to AARO and do the same thing there and testify. Then after that, I was asked to, I believe a couple of months later, go to the ICIG and go through that process as well. There was a little bit of mix-up initially as to whether I should go to DODIG or the ICIG when I had to go through that step, because at the time I was serving in a joint planner role, not necessarily an intelligence role. So they were like, well, let's see if he belongs in the DODIG, but they ended up deciding that, no, I should go to the intelligence community IG, because the time frame that I was concerned with was when I was working as an intel guy. So that's why I ended up first almost going to the DODIG, but ended up going to the ICIG. So there was a little bit of that jostling around that happened. So I did all three of those processes, and then I went through and did my own pre-publication DOPSR about what I could speak about so I could do some public speaking. And I didn't get that back until earlier this year in 2024, because it took about a whole year to go through all those different processes. And that's why David was in a better position last year. In 2023, David Grush went forward. I wanted to join with him in that, and people had asked me if I could, but I just wasn't ready yet. I hadn't gone through all the different hoops yet. And besides that, I was being watched, and I was obviously being followed by somebody. So those are the kind of things that I was going through, and I wasn't quite ready to go public yet.
Now, how did Congress know about your story in 2022?
Well, that happened after the UAP task force interviewed me, after I posted about my Nellis test range incident, where I was face-to-face with an NHI, or what I think was an NHI. And that interview with the UAP task force led to them contacting a committee member and introducing me to the Congress committees. And that's when their interest was piqued, and they asked me to come in after that, some months after.
Now, when AARO interviewed you, did they ask you to sign a non-disclosure agreement?
No. I spoke to them on a classified line. Everything was private. Everything I was saying was unclassified. So there was no need really for an NDA at that point. And I haven't had to since they were actually drafting the legislation for folks like myself anyway. And the NDAA covered me from then on, protection-wise, because this, quickly went from just me posting on the forum to quickly turning into, well, let's get him through the whistleblower process. So I think the NDA was not a moot point at that point because we were going to use the legislation to cover it all.
When the United States and China clash, the world will never be the same, especially when forces beyond reality threaten to intervene. What if the United States went to war with the People's Republic of China? How would these rivals fight for supremacy on land, sea, air, and across the stochastic streams of time? What wonder weapons would be unleashed? What horrors would emerge from the irradiated sludge of the South China Sea? What heroes would rise and forever change the course of history? Tread into the deepest and darkest dimensions of the multiverse, gaze through a kaleidoscope of fractured realities, and bear witness to the disturbing visions of World War III from today's greatest minds in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Weird World War, China. Available now from Baen Books at baen.com.
Okay, and then in your opinion, what's the purpose of AARO? Not the stated purpose, but what do you think their real goal is at the end of the day?
At this point, after seeing the reports, I know that they misrepresented some of the things that I've said, and some of the things that the other whistleblowers have said. I've found out that they didn't do that, do them justice either. There are other journalist friends that I have that have done lots of research, and they looked at the report and found what they thought were glaring errors or
they had like the wrong date on like things that are easily verifiable, right?
Correct.
So, yeah.
Correct. So they did all of those things in the reporting. So I'm kind of left with a feeling of distrust for the organization, at least as it was run under Sean Kirkpatrick. When I met Sean, he definitely is a scientist at heart. And I think that he already had a preconceived notion that he didn't believe in this stuff, but he was going to give it a fair shake. But I think that ultimately I kind of got the feeling that no matter what anybody said or what he was presented with, that, he would find reason to debunk it all, is what I felt. Is that
I think he knows it's real. I think I think I think it's a counterintelligence operation, but that's just
it could be
my personal opinion, right?
Right, and that's kind of my personal opinion also, is that they picked him. He was, what I was told, was like their best pick to be that person. But at the end of the day, I'm like, this was kind of terrible because AARO is managed by the DoD. All the whistleblowers that have come forward are complaining about its DoD and this program that they're whistleblowing on. Why would you have DoD investigating themselves through AARO? And it just makes no sense to me. I'm like, that's kind of an oxymoron. So I think we need to rethink all of that and kind of get a more honest investigation is really what I would think would kind of clarify some things. As long as it was not tainted at all. And that might be a tough nut to crack, but I think we could pull it off. I think we're smart enough to do that.
Well, I mean, it could also be that the left hand is talking to the right hand, and it's just part of the process where you go through these filters, and AARO's just a filter to make sure that you're not disclosing any classified information. And if you do, they lock you down and then stop you from going forward.
That's correct.
That would be my bet. I think it's kind of like a nod, wink, wink, and everybody's in on the secret, except basically the American people. And I think it's just a procedural thing. And they, for very obvious reasons, can say, hey, this is an organization that's intended to identify leakers or who are at least leaking classified information and then shutting them down. And again, I'm not a fan of AARO, but it could also be to advise scientists who are deep in this program that if they do this in the wrong way and come out publicly and don't kind of protect their identities, they're going to be a target of Russian and Chinese espionage. So I don't want to paint AARO in a completely negative light, but I hate the fact that they're lying to the American people. Like, that still bothers me regardless.
Yeah, and it bothers me as well. I do know that I wouldn't say straight out lie, but I would say definitely misrepresented some of the statements I made, others have made, not fully investigating all the historical data. I know that those are all real fallacies of the reporting, and that doesn't reflect well on them, and that they didn't get an endorsement through certain people in the Department of Defense to back them up on the report. And that speaks volumes about the quality of the report itself even was poor, Even the editing, I've written policy in some of my jobs and capacities as an action officer, and those things would not have met my muster inside of my office spaces. Some of the editing errors and things like this were just really bad.
To advertise on Through a Glass Darkly, email throughaglassdarkly@gmail.com.
And I also think the other thing about the report is that they actually did a hit piece on the people that had some religious leaning, and they mentioned that, and I think that was a personal attack. I don't think that has a place in any kind of a professional military document at all.
Well, actually, you mentioned that. You reminded me of a question I wanted to ask you that I didn't ask you in the last interview. When the two entities asked you about if you were religious, what do you think they were getting at?
They honestly were wanting to know if my mom believed in God. That's really what the other part of the conversation she said. They were interested to find out if she believed in God. Those two entities did.
And why do you think they were interested in that?
Well, I think in relation to the hardship we were under, I think that perhaps as the hierarchies of intelligence go, there's an ultimate top of the food chain kind of individual that I believe people call God. I think he's God. Other people call him by other names or whatever, but there is that supreme being that is looked up to. And I think that perhaps these individuals that were talking to my mom are connected to that faction of entities that are aligned with that supreme intelligence. And I believe that there are other factions that don't want to. And I think that's a part of a belief and a faith a lot of times. But at the same time, there may be some real reality to that in the larger universe and scheme of life, that there is a hierarchy, and there is a God, and we may not be aware of it right now, but it may end up being the reality later on in life. But everybody has to choose what side they're on.
Well, I mean, if you watch the news, it's pretty the improbabilities of all the bad things that are happening everywhere all at once don't make any sense. Not from a conspiracy theory. Even if there were an evil cabal at the Bilderberg group, scheming and conniving, they couldn't pull off this seemingly coordinated effort to just cause chaos and bring down. I mean, you just can't. Just all the things that are happening, even in our country right now, they just don't make sense.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen too many synchronicities in things that are going on. There's obviously some kind of an undertone or hidden agenda that's taking place behind the scenes with all the turmoil. I believe.
But it's not by human hands. It's there's an element that is not by human hands, right?
Yeah,
it's just humans don't coordinate that well.
Correct. And that's what I was going to allude to, is that after my experience with telepathy and that feeling of emotion that I got, that wave of emotion from that entity, he was civilized. I believe he's on the right side of everything. But I also believe that there are ones that are not. And I think there are a portion of people in the world that, are probably could be manipulated by a telepathic want to riot or get angry so much that you're unwilling to reason with another group of people. And that to me is something that I look at some of the responses for the ones that end up being violent in our society. And you listen to their responses, and it's almost as if they're totally irrational and they don't even realize.
Nobody's home. Nobody's home.
Like, where did you come up with this? Oh, I've just got a really strong emotion that I hate Trump, or I got a really strong emotion that I hate all of this and all of that, and I can't even, think about listening to any of what you say. It's just, to me, it's like, how do they get that way? It's just irrational. It's not a normal thing.
It's also propaganda. It's constant, incessive propaganda.
It's like brainwashing. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll get off the soapbox. But
look, none of it makes any sense. It just doesn't. Nobody's thinking critically. I mean, I'll give you a few examples, right? And I got to be cautious of how I say this. At the very beginning of the pandemic, it was pretty obvious that this thing was a lab leak, like super obvious. But if you came out and said, if you even suggested, did we check the lab? There's a lab right there. It's kind of focused on novel coronavirus research. I don't know. It's in the same city where the thing broke out. Oh, no. A bat bit a penguin, and someone in a wet market ate a penguin and got this thing. And it's like, and that was less racist, apparently, than saying, hey, maybe it just leaked from a lab, right?
Yeah,
like, what's more racist than saying those
Wuhan
barbarians are eating bats, right?
Yeah.
And then,
it's like, no. Yeah, because the Wuhan lab was...
like a year and a half or whatever, the FBI comes out and says that's the most likely origin. And then you find out that the NIH funded EcoHealth, which funded development. Like, there's just really bizarre coordination and work on bioweapons and
where are they getting
I shouldn't say
from?
I can't make that leap, but I can make the leap that gain of function research was going on that should not have been done, right? So that's one example. The next example is the current VP, right? Tons of media coverage.
Yeah.
You are the border czar. You're going to take control of the border and, make sure that we have a border czar. And then a presidential candidate just repeats that. And it's like, this presidential candidate lied, like steaming lie. This person was never the border czar. Forget everything you've heard. I mean, it's just like right in our faces. And again, I'm not trying to make a political thing, but it's like we've gotten to the point where it's crazy. Like right now, they are preparing Rikers Island to imprison a presidential candidate on 2 months before a federal election. Like, are these people thinking clearly? Are they like thinking of the implications of any of this? And again, I'm not trying to position this as, then you have Congress people talking about, well, if one candidate wins, we'll just, we're going to invoke the 14th Amendment, Section 3, and we're just going to, are you nuts? Are you crazy?
When you try to put some logic into the mix, there's a lot of things that start to become very glaringly sore thumbs or whatever you want to call it. And I think that most people that aren't susceptible to that, again, it goes back to, any kind of influence, whether it's telepathic by NHI or even ourselves, you're the person who chooses to respond, to that. You can literally not be angry, or you can literally choose to be kind to somebody who's not very kind to you. And that's really where we need to get back to, because honestly, that's where I think what we've lost touch with is that I don't think Americans and everybody around the world have ever totally agreed on everything, but we've learned how to get along with each other, and it didn't get in the way. And here we are now in a generation in these last, I think, eight years or so of presidential elections, maybe even longer, maybe the past 12 years, that there's been a slow turning of tide where people just can't handle dealing with life anymore. They have to have it their way, or something bad's going to happen to somebody they disagree with. They have to make somebody suffer if we don't all agree with them 100% on this or that. And it's like, no, these are all your personal views. We don't have to agree on everything. That's why we have a hierarchy of law, and there's communal law. Everybody doesn't hurt each other. We don't mess with each other. Then there's the national law. How do we want to act as a nation? And then there's personal space where that's governed by moral value. And, are you going to be a good neighbor kind of person? Or are you going to be the neighbor trying to steal things from my
And
property.
the thing is, both sides need each other. Like, you need people on the left kind of testing the boundaries and pushing society forward. You need people on the right to make sure that they're not going too fast and causing the stability of society to unravel. And,
Correct.
you know, if you shut down one side, you're going to have nothing but anarchy on either, and the same thing, if you have too much order, people feel stifled, and they, it's like they can explode with unrest, etc. So you have, like, there's a reason that a balance exists, and you shouldn't shut down one side or the other. Otherwise, you're going to get extreme reactions. So
Right.
anyway, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to derail us, but
I agree, but you're right. We've lost our balance in life, and we need to get back to it. We need to swing the pendulum back to the center instead of all this extremist infighting, and just become who we should be. I think that's really what it is. So I wake up every day, and I hope everybody else wakes up every day knowing they have a choice. And that choice is to be the best you can be and build others up and build up on the things that you find are noble.
Mhm.
Or you can join the crowd of complainers and just tear things down and rip them apart. I choose to be the one that tends to build up.
And that's one thing that this channel is all about, is truth. In all its beauty and ugliness, it doesn't matter. All that matters is the truth.
Yeah.
And we live now in a society that's like the forces of censorship. You had the British police officer threatening to extradite Americans for
Tweeting.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I find it humorous that he would say something like that he's defending freedom of speech while he's tearing down freedom of speech. It's just
He's threatening people. He's threatening people. Like,
anyway, we don't want to keep going down there, but to get back on track, I think the same thing is happening with disclosure, is that, there seems to be some resistance there, and it's coming from, again, a hidden agenda and or invisible force, whatever you want to call it. And there's a possibility that some of that might be coming from, the NHI, that they are trying to influence us to some degree. And part of it is trying to get us to argue amongst each other, because that puts it at a disadvantage. And we're vulnerable because we just don't have a way forward unless we choose to make that way forward by getting along with each other. And I think that would pretty much destroy any agenda that the NHI or anybody else has, whether it's, humans against humans or NHI against humans. If we just learn how to get along, I think it destroys any agenda.
where do you think, in your private discussions with members of Congress, how do you think this thing's going to evolve over the next year in terms of disclosure?
I have been actively doing my part in that behind the scenes. I don't want to talk too much in depth about who those people are that I am contacting, but they are. I do have continuous contact with Congress and also other people that are advocates of disclosure, that are leading UAP experts from all walks of life, scientific, just leaders from our government, and so on and so forth. And we're all singing the same tune. And what it is we know this year, if we just do testimony like we did last year, we're not going to get much further down the road. We need to do something different this year. And that's something I'm hopeful for, because what I'm hearing now is they're really asking tougher questions, both of me and other people that they've been talking to. And they're getting some real answers. And it looks like we're chasing down some really good, tangible things that we can do, both in the new legislation that they're drafting and organizing some things that we didn't have before. So I'm hopeful that we are going to get, I would say the things that I'm advocating for is we need a group that is focused on the UAP issue, so that the winds of change through politics don't take over and it washes over our effort for disclosure. So that would be a good thing, to have a solid group of people that are advising the staff as all this busyness goes through the election cycle and everything else. The other thing is we need stricter, or not stricter, but expanded whistleblower rights. I know I've suffered my first, what they call administrative terrorism, I guess. Could have been just a clerical error, but I highly doubt that. But they messed with my clearance. So there's things that we can do to safeguard whistleblowers who have clearances and make sure that the clearances are warehoused somewhere or some processes in place that you can't just swipe our clearance, like they have been, because that seems to be a normal thing for them to do, is to use administrative processes to mess with you. And sometimes, get you to lose your job, take your clearance, any number of things. They try to quietly get rid of the whistleblower guy that they don't like. So those are the kind of things that I'm working on is, well, we've seen this a number of times. Can't we legislate something that'll stop them from being able to just get rid of somebody just because they went and blew the whistle? We can do better and put some teeth to it as well, that if somebody does start to act out, that those people actually do suffer for, if it's found that they were lashing out at a whistleblower for no good reason other than the fact they wanted to continue the deception and lies or whatever it is they're trying to cover up, then yeah, they need to be put under the thumb big time. So those are the kind of things I'm advocating for. So there's those two prongs, that the legislation has to be stronger for whistleblowers. We need to have a group of people that report to Congress that on nothing but the UAP issue, that are going to be unaffected by the politics of the day. And then we also, the third thing that I think is the most important, is advocating for a real investigation that is not the DOD investigating themselves. If we can do that one thing, I think we're smart enough to be able to formulate a good team. I agree we're probably going to need some people that are, like myself, have been part of the program. And you can complain that, that expertise might be tainted. But if we have a proper mix and balance on the team, you can have that within the team so you know how to direct things. Because I think I would be a good actor, but other people might think, oh, he was in the program, so therefore he can't, do this. Well, that remains to be seen. But I think we're smart enough to get around some of those roadblocks. So that's something, like I said, that's the most important thing. That if you were to ask me to come testify and speak to Congress this year and the public, that would be my one big ticket item. If you were at the end of the day, they said, Jason, what do you want from us? I would say investigation.
Do you think we're ever gonna, or the information will be disclosed about the nature of our involvement as a government with NHI in terms of how long we've been cooperating, yes, just at a very high level?
I believe so. I know enough about who's involved in those decision-making plans. As most people know, there's a moratorium after 50 years to declassify things, like the CIA did with their UAP files. In this case, I think that the program was bigoted. In other words, they didn't ever intend to divulge anything, but that's made it at a higher level, like at the Secretary of Defense level, presidential level. But it's those people now that need to reconsider, it has been a century. Do we need all of the deception, or can we at least come to some agreement that parts of this can be declassified, like the presence of the NHI, and that we are not alone? That alone is not classified and would be perfectly okay, and probably would help the program to get the monkey off their back to some degree. Now, I agree that we're not going to be able to declassify the weapon systems.
Yeah, we don't need to know that.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees 100% on that point. But if they would just come out and just say, look, we're sorry, yeah, we haven't been alone. But then again, there are problems with that, because if they have entered into agreements with said NHIs and things like this without the government's involvement and the public knowing about it, yeah, that's going to be a touchy-feely thing. And that's where I think some of them who have wanted to come forward have said, I need amnesty if I'm coming forward with this, because this is going to create waves, So we're going to have to, think about, if that's the case, we're going to have to really detail out, well, what does disclosure mean? How much disclosure? What can be declassified? What is going to be the process of amnesty? Because if there was no kidding, crimes against humanity, does amnesty apply in that case or not? We're going to have to make judgment calls.
It's too late. They've already had enough time. No.
Right. So that's the whole thing. So,
Yeah.
I think that the ones that have committed crimes against humanity, if they did do that those are people that are few and far between. And most of the people I knew when I was in the program are simply very patriotic people, scientists, engineers, and probably were quite unaware that they were participating in a program that had nefarious things going on. So there is a cadre and a dividing line there and a threshold that needs to be discussed. And that's also going to have to be part of the legislation and part of the investigation and how it takes place and the authorities that are going to be needed and exactly who's going to be on those teams to do the investigation. That's the other thing, because you're talking about traversing local law enforcement, because you're talking about maybe the interaction between the Department of Defense and private industry. You can't just walk into a private industry and do whatever you want. You've got to have warrants. You've got to do this, that, and the other. So you've got the involvement of both local police, probably Department of Homeland Security. They need to have certain titles. Some of this may end up in the titles that FBI has in their authority to execute, because you're going to have to go state by state by state, and every state has different laws, and it's going to be getting very complicated. But these are all the parts of disclosure that we're getting closer to now. And this is the reality we're up against, and that's what I'm in the mix of right now, trying to parse out and make aware or help our government be aware of all these nuances that we're going to confront. And I think they're aware of that.
Now, you said it's been a century? You're talking like 1924.
Oh,
something happened in 1924?
Yeah, actually, it goes back even further than that. But I'm saying, 1954 is actually when the program stood up officially on paper. Okay.
And that's when there was a huge peak. That was between, I think 47 is a big UFO peak. 54 was a huge UFO peak.
Yes. And I think it all stemmed from the Roswell in the 1940s, where, that kind of turned into the evolution of the program in an official sense. And initially, just a generalized body of people were thrown together to try to handle it all initially. And then it evolved into a no-kidding program. And it's kind of went through its evolutionary cycles and probably renamed several different ways in different times for whatever reasons.
And like Majestic and Zodiac and all that sort of stuff.
Right. And some of those might be old terms now, and they're totally different names for these things now. So yes, it's been evolving ever since then and grown also in other ways. So yeah, that's why I say it's been about a century if you include it being, closer to the Roswell incident. And, probably more like 70 to 80 years would be more of the official sense of the program. So, but when I say century, I'm just rounding up the number.
Okay. Any words for what folks can do? Well, actually, I wanted to ask you, when you first came out about this, did you experience you mentioned some administrative terrorism. Did you exhibit, did you experience any other threats, intimidations, aspersions on your character, things like that?
Yes, I had some of the normal stuff where people on the UAP task force forum, they didn't like what I had to say, and they tried to make it sound like I was a bad actor of some kind. I've had to suffer through that, but I get that even when I've gone public. There's just people that are just terrible. It's like, come on, all you have to do, is just curse at somebody. Is that your thing? You don't even
if you don't want to believe it, just don't believe it.
Don't show up for the show. Okay, thank you very much. Right. You got nothing great to say. You don't really have anything to back up other than the fact you feel bad about things. Thanks. Right. See you later. But then I also have suffered other things, like when I was working over on the NSA campus, my car got broken into 3 times. So somebody had to invite somebody onto the campus, because you can't just walk on the NSA campus. You've got to have credentials. So somebody signed on somebody that broke into my car 3 times while I was at work. So that I don't know how to take that. I've been wanting to buy one of those detectors that finds hidden cameras and things like that and just scan my apartment and my car. I'm sure that those have been things that maybe they've done to me at certain points and maybe even now are doing. I wish I didn't.
Well, I mean, if you have a laptop or a cell phone, which you do,
right,
you'll need to tell me this. Like, everything is funneled into some server farm somewhere, and they can review everything at any time. It's completely illegal, but they do it anyway.
I'd say that yes, but so yes, I've seen these strange occurrences, but at the same time, I've had this really strange feeling that there are people even in the program that are trying to protect me as well, or they're just letting me know that we kind of agree with what you're trying to do, Jason, and you're one of us, but you've got a hell of a lot of people to convince at this point, and they're not sure if any of this is going to be successful. I think they hope that we get to a better place because that's who I am. I'm not pissed off at the people in the program. I'm not particularly pissed off at anybody in the Pentagon or anywhere else. I have always been an advocate of trying to be the peace giver, trying to find the level ground that we can all stand on. And my level ground is that I want everybody that's in the program or outside the program to realize we've made some mistakes. Let's try to get better at this. And let's try to just straighten everything out and get rid of the bad actors that have ended up in the mix, that may have screwed things up even worse than what they needed to be. And let's let the people that know what they're doing and have good intentions remain and do the work that needs to be done. And then the program can run more smoothly and more effectively without the influences of all these bad actors. And that's really what this is about, is that it's been going on for so long. I think the bad actors have gotten themselves into positions of power. They've done things with the technologies that they shouldn't have, and they need to be held to account for that. And then there are other people that are also in high positions within the program that know and see all of these things. And now maybe they're hearing my voice and several other whistleblowers' voices, and they're ready to take action and say, yeah, it's time to change. And so I'm hoping it's going to be from the inside and the outside, that somewhere we'll meet on the bridge and actually get to that better place.
Now, you've heard these, or have you heard about these dates, like sometime in either 2026 or 2027?
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of what that's all about?
Oh, yeah. That's one of my biggest things as well. My motivations for coming forward is that there's a risk that the NHI want their stuff back. And that's what I had heard on Mission, is that, yeah, they do want their stuff back, and they want their biologics back and their friends that are in prison back. Apparently, we've imprisoned some of them, because in the phone call that I overheard or that I monitored, was that the NHI were going to come back about 50 years from the 1990s and demand that they had three things they said. They wanted their equipment back, they wanted the prisoners released, and then if those two conditions were met, then the emissaries could be exchanged. So the conversation then closed out on a note that I found horrifying, and that was the person on the distant end of the phone call stated, well, what happens if we don't return this stuff? And the other guy said, well, if we don't, you don't want to be those people. Those people are going to be put to death. So the people in the program, if that conversation and everything in it is true, one way or another, this program is doomed if they don't return the stuff. If they do return the stuff, there's a possibility of continuing, and there's a possibility of getting to a better place. But if they continue the deception wholeheartedly as they have been, it's going to end very, very badly. Very, very badly.
It sounds like it's just that group of people who are lying to the American people. Good.
Right. And
good.
That's
I hope they don't return it. I hope they don't return it.
Well, unfortunately, I think that they are stuck because they have been doing this for so many years a certain way. And, they think that this is going to work. Just keep deceiving, that somehow this is all.
You know what that tells me? That tells me, like, just pure game theory, no mercy. No mercy. They lied to us for so many years, if they give this stuff up, the NHI are going to show up, everybody's going to know. If they come out and try to get mercy, the only reason they gave it up is because their lives were threatened. So no mercy. There's no reason to spare them. It's going to come out anyway. That makes things pretty simple, Jason. Like, no mercy.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do have a heart for my friends that are still stuck in the program, that I want to try to save their lives if I can by at least warning them one last time and saying, doing what I'm doing this year to go public and just announce to them, hey, I was part of the program. You and I listened to the same conversations, and damn good and well that day when we monitored that phone call, you came and listened to the exact same phone call I had recorded. And you were just as shocked to know that death might be on the doorstep of some of these people in the program. And you better wake up and realize that something has to happen, unless you just want to watch time go by and watch these people die, wake up, right thing.
You're much kinder than me. Like, these people are just like, if they haven't come out by now, like you have, it's too late. It's too late.
It may be, you're right. And there's a possibility that window of time, that even though the clock, my clock started ticking from my phone intercept in 1993, which means that last year or even before this, that window of time has already started to transpire. And maybe that's why we're seeing some of these flaps of UFOs, is maybe this is them coming back and killing people in the program and taking their stuff back by force.
It sounds like they're not going to go after normal people who have nothing to do with this.
No.
It sounds like it's going to be very targeted.
Yeah, and we may not even know openly that this was going on even. We'll just see some UFOs flying around and have another flap or two.
Yeah, we'll see some human mutilations here and there,
Yeah, well, they're going to be in clandestine installations anyway, working away, and they'll just disappear. And maybe if you look at some of the people's records that, where did this guy go within, the next 5 years, maybe that'll show that there's a portion of people that have been killed, by the NHI or otherwise dealt with.
Well, look, I'm not rooting for it, but I don't feel bad about it.
Well, I would say that, yes, I'm a little bit on that boat as well, that, for some of them that I know are to blame, I definitely feel that way. But there are a bunch of people, like I said, that are on the periphery, that are just doing what they think is a patriotic job, and they don't deserve death. But if they were aware of it and didn't say anything, that I'm kind of on the fence about, because, me, I am proactive, that I took seriously my oath of silence, yes, but I also know that I take seriously my oath that if I observed or thought there was fraud, waste, and abuse, that needs to be reported. And that is something that everybody in the program, if they know of any crimes, they need to come forward, because that's also their responsibility, just like me.
And Jason, it's not like you came out outside of the system, right? Like that's when you violate your oath. There are procedures that you can go through, like you mentioned, the ICIG, and kind of do things in the proper manner so that in doing so, you never violate your oath. Yeah. And these people have chosen not to do that. These people have chosen to. So come get them. Come get them.
Yeah. But we'll see how it falls out if we do get to that point. But we have some wickets to go through. I'm hoping that the Secretary of Defense or whoever the cognizant authority is over the program takes a look at what can be declassified, and also provides some more transparency so that it gets the monkey off their back. And also it gets rid of the riffraff who's been doing bad things that maybe even the Secretary of Defense and above don't even know, because they don't have all the detail level at the lower levels of what exactly, this one particular program manager is doing with these platforms that they've created with the technologies they have, and actually using them for the wrong purposes and wasting all the effort on a crime kind of a thing. And
not only that, they sequestered this technology for over 80 years, or nearly 80 years. And the bulk of humanity didn't get a chance to fully exploit that technology because, right, like the way that they kept this quiet for so long. So I really don't feel bad. I come get them. Come
Well,
get them.
I agree. And that's kind of where things are right now. And I'm sure that it's going to remain that way. But depending on who you are, you're going to have to make the decisions for yourself about what you want to have happen. Like I said, the process of disclosure needs some more definition. And I think Congress knows that. We know more now than we did before. Like I said, they're asking the right questions to get us further down the road this year. And then it's really, it would be nice if the Secretary of Defense or whoever else is able to declassify parts of this. It would make the job easier, and it'd be easier on them as well to just do it, come clean on certain things and just reveal the whole thing in a classified environment. I don't care how they do it. And then we get to a different place a lot quicker that way. But then if they resist the entire way through it, by the end of the day, when they do finally get caught out and it is investigated properly, then you're right. The gloves are going to come off and all the amnesty will no longer be on the table for them. And they're going to get the full brunt of the law and the anger of the public. And literally the entire world will tumble down brick upon brick on their head.
Jason, if what you're saying is true, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't disclosed by now, they're doomed. And they deserve it. They're doomed. So, for folks who are part of this program and have harmed people or disparaged people because they told the truth, clock's ticking. 1 or 2 years, and you're done. Nothing's going to save you. Anyway, I'm feeling a little bit happy about this, and I shouldn't. I abhor deception. I abhor people who lie to their comrades, to the people around them about something. We're not talking about weapons programs, right? We're not asking for that. We're talking about the fundamental nature of reality. We have people on Earth who are suffering right now, who are looking at their fellow citizens, and in many cases are horrified by how debased some elements of humanity have become. And this is one thing that could bring hope. This is one thing that could unify humanity to work together and move forward. And these people have ignored that for their own personal gain. And karma's coming.
Yeah, I'd say that, the clock is ticking, definitely. And it's not just me. I mean,
tick-tock.
Yeah, there's 70 or 80 people that have come forward already, and I'm sure that there's been even more since when David Grush gave those numbers out. There's been a lot more come through. So the clock is ticking, and it's not going to end well if they continue the same old game. It's too late to play that anymore.
They can continue the same old game, but it's too late. It's too late.
Yeah, it's one thing to have a deception going on against an adversary, but to your own people and your own nation, that, to me, should never have happened in the first place.
Yeah, people's lives have been ruined for chance encounters of something that probably terrified them, and the only crime they committed was that they spoke up. They spoke out, and they were brave enough to admit what happened. And then they were gaslighted, called crazy, and some of them likely committed suicide. This is, I not only think that the existence of this program coming out at this point, based on what's going on in this country, I think institutions are already suffering in terms of trust and confidence that the people have in them. And I think it no longer is, because I think the government had last year to do it. This was the last opportunity that our current institutions had to come forward and come clean as kind of an olive branch for why they deserve to exist.
Yeah, and I agree.
I don't know if we make it. I don't know if we make it past January. I already see 3 waves of potential instability. The first is going to be on September 18th, when there's that Trump sentencing, right? The second period of instability will be on election day itself. And then the third period will be on Inauguration Day based on whoever's sworn in. And I mean, someone tried to assassinate a political candidate, and it's like, and then it was followed almost immediately by what seemed to me to be a soft coup of the sitting president of the United States. And people don't seem to see it. Like they just, oh, well, it's the next thing in the news cycle. So I don't think our government has that much time. This might be the one thing that they could do to unite people and save the republic. Because right now, I'm worried. I am genuinely worried.
Yeah. I agree. How much time we have is never something that you want to play with. Sitting on your laurels, being lazy, whatever, being complacent is not a good strategy for anybody. Always be proactive, be prudent, be preventive if you can be. And I think that that's what we're pushing for. That's what I'm pushing for. And like you say, the time may not even be existent now or very short. It's coming to a head, definitely. Everything's coming to a head. I definitely get that feeling, whether you're talking about society in general and or this disclosure issue. It's all coming to a head. I just see everything coming to a point really within this year or next year. There's going to have to be some sort of a momentous decision made one way or the other. And we'll see how it pans out. I'm hoping for the best. I've been trying to save as many as I can out of it. As you know, now that you've interviewed me, that I'm a pretty nice guy. I'm not adversarial by any means, and I don't try to be unless you push me too far. And then I turn into Papa Bear, But most of the time I walk silently and carry a big stick, and I'm hoping I don't have to pull out the stick at this point. And I don't think I'm seeing the indications that anybody's responding properly at all.
Yeah, Jason, I'm a former cavalry officer. So
okay.
There's still a lot of fight left in me. And to all the deceivers out there, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Anyway, I don't like liars, man. I don't like liars. Any final words for the audience?
Hang in there. You've got a lot of good people fighting the fight. I know them personally, and they're all actively trying to do the best with what they can. I do see a sense of urgency also, and those are all good things. And just please try to support us. Realize that there are people like myself out there that are suffering greatly for what they're doing. I nearly lost my job, my clearance. I still don't have my clearance back, by the way, so I'm not even sure if that's going to happen. But we'll find out. And support us. We can't do this alone. We might lose our livelihoods. There are people with PTSD that need medical help. There are people that have been exposed to toxins in this program as well. They need access to veterans' homes just like every other disabled vet would. All those things we need to think about and support these folks because they are patriots. A lot of them are, and I agree that there's very few of them that are the snakes in the grass. And we'll sort them out as we go. So just help us to do those things and really vote smartly this time. I hope nobody votes with emotion and then they actually vote with their, no kidding, what people have actually done. And you can see it bold-facedly in the politics. Just do your homework this time around on the election, and you'll see who the candidates need to be. And you may feel like it's the better of two evils, but that's the way it's always been in every election I've ever voted in. I've never wholly liked any particular candidate. There's always been something. So get over yourself and make the right choice rather than getting all emotional and all caught up in the media. Please do that because we need it so much to get our nation back on track. And please stop fighting, honestly.
Jason, you are a gentleman and a patriot. Thank you so much for appearing on my show, and keep up the good fight, brother.
I shall. I'm on mission, as I say. I'm engaged.
Yeah, Charlie Mike.
Yep.
you enjoyed today's video, please hit like and subscribe, and also hit the notification button so you can be notified whenever I post new content. Thank you. Now, if you're enjoying the channel and you want to support it, there are several things you can do. In fact, there are 5 things you can do. The first thing you can do is just buy my books. I got plenty of books out in the market right now, and I would prefer that folks buy a book rather than giving me direct support because they get something out of it. They get a real tangible product. The second way you can support me is by becoming a member on YouTube or becoming a patron on Patreon. And just go to either site and it'll explain everything. The third way you can support the channel is by checking out my merch site, which is here. There's plenty of stuff that you can get to support the channel. And I'd appreciate that you have it and can wear it. Not only do you help support the channel, but you also help promote the channel, and I appreciate that. The fourth way that you can support the channel, and this is really easy, is anytime you want to buy something on Amazon, literally just go to the description below and click on any link, literally any link. The channel gets a cut of that, and it costs you no extra money. You just go through the link, as I'm part of the Amazon Affiliates Club. The fifth and final way you can support the channel is through donations. Now, I don't prefer these because it's more of an expression of gratitude, but you don't really get anything out of it as a subscriber to the channel. However, if you decide to do these options, there's 2 options. There's Buy Me a Coffee, which is a separate site, and there's also, you can go through YouTube with either a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. Again, I prefer Buy Me a Coffee because that organization takes less money than Amazon does. But either way, I appreciate any support you are willing to give the channel. So thank you very much and keep watching. I really appreciate it.